Longhorns have another commitment. Yeah, that's right. It's a breaking news edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Show. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Jason Sukamel. This video is brought to you by the fine folks over at Prime Shrimp. Use that promo code OrangeBloods30. You get 30% off all orders of 6+. Just go to Prime Shrimp, check it out. It's pretty self-explanatory. Jason, I think you can attest to the fact that all of the reviews on Prime Shrimp have been pretty fantastic. Everybody on Orange Bloods that's reported back always reports back that they will be ordering more, which
those threads always, threads always blow up. Yeah,
that's the sign that you're doing a good thing when people are quick to want to return. That's like us doing these these commitment analysis videos. We just keep coming back. DeAndre Robinson, defensive tackle out of Orlando, Florida. The Longhorns go back to Orlando. It is a new recruiting ground for them. This time they land a 4-star defensive tackle, a guy that is at a position of major need. I've got all kinds of thoughts on this, and they go in a bunch of different directions. What about for you? The thing about this commitment that stands out the most is what?
Just a guy that Bo Davis really targeted early on. And I mean, this is a guy that Texas prioritized. He's a Rivals 250 member. He's just inside the top 200. Honestly, Catch, I think he's a little underranked by Rivals. You might have it in front of you. I don't know what other services have him ranked, but I mean, he's I've seen him in person when he visited Texas, just a big kid that can move really well.
Good-looking kid.
He is. He really is. And I think he's got a lot of upside. Now, will he maximize his potential? There's a lot that goes into this kind of stuff, but I think the tools are there for him to be a fantastic player for Texas. They go into Florida, get him away. He had a top 10, but really it came down to Texas and Florida to get him away from the in-state school. I remember talking to DeAndre after he visited Texas. I mean, I kind of wish I would have been a little more aggressive in my reporting. I mean, I said back then, hey, this guy really likes Texas. Keep an eye on this one. But just something in my gut kind of told me, and I mean, the way he talked about Bo Davis and I want to come back and I want to come back for an official visit. I might come back in a couple of months from now. And he didn't come out and say at that time that Texas was his leader, but they were right there at the top of his list. Bo Davis does a great job staying on him. I think this is a really, really good pickup for Texas. Their second defensive tackle commitment. They needed at least 2 of them. They've got 2 in the boat now. I think this is a nice pickup for Bo Davis and for Texas.
You mentioned the rankings. So he's 197, excuse me. I'm having a difficult time talking today. 197 nationally by Rivals. So he's the number 11 defensive lineman, the number 34 prospect in the state of Florida. Would you believe it that Rivals, and this is actually kind of a theme for a lot of the commitments in this class.
You going to tell me that Rivals has him the highest?
Rivals has him ranked the highest,
oh.
Which I feel like we've said on a lot of these commitment videos in the last couple of weeks, going back to the mid part of June. ESPN has him ranked as the number 48 player in the state of Texas, got him as a 4-star. On3 has him as a national 2, so he's 271 nationally for On3. The number 32 overall prospect in the state of Florida. 24/7 has him as a high 3-star, number 106 in Florida. Kind of surprising. 63 total offers. That was the thing when I went to his player page today, as I was just kind of overlooking it and changing it in the database and doing all that kind of stuff. That was the thing that jumped out to me, is that he may have as many or more scholarship offers as just about any player I've seen that the Longhorns have recruited this year. 63 jumps off the map.
Well, let me jump in real quickly there. He's one of the guys who really makes sure every offer gets – he doesn't talk a lot, Catch, but he makes sure to DM me and like, hey, dude, I'm missing Northwestern Mississippi State. Can you please put that offer on my profile? So I think I'm responsible for about 40 of those offers being entered. But, he makes sure that he gets all of his offers listed. But he is a wanted man, certainly, with a lot of offers from around the country.
It's interesting. He visits Georgia 1 week after visiting Texas, and yet – there's a lot of Florida discussion along the way. He got offered by Alabama in the middle of June. The offers of just Ohio State offered in the middle of June. So a lot of, at his position, the guys when they hit at that position are worth their weight in gold. It's why he might only be a low 4-star in the rankings, but nationally schools just covet that kind of upside, that kind of size, 6'5", 290. Like you mentioned, we both talked about it. You saw him in a picture again, I'm having a hard time talking to him. I'm just overwhelmed by Robinson's commitment to Texas. You talked about in person how he impressed you, but I could see the photos and go, okay.
He's got videos on Twitter where he's doing these crazy box jumps, things that guys his size should not be doing, So,
so when we talk about this, what do we think? It's their second defensive tackle commitment in this class, in the proper context. Like, what does that mean? Where do they go from here? What's the 30,000-foot view of defensive tackle recruiting from your position, and kind of, is there any other meat on the bone? If not, if this was it, how big is this commitment in the context of not a lot of options maybe at this position that they've hit on? It makes him even more critical, I think.
Yeah, there really weren't many. Terrence Hibbler is a guy that they brought in who's committed elsewhere. I don't think they'll end up getting him. Alex January is the only guy in state really that they targeted. It's just not a good group of in-state defensive tackles. It's not a deep group, I should say, of in-state defensive tackles. They targeted Alex January. He was the only one. They landed him. So this is a big commitment in terms of, like you said, there's not a lot of meat on the bone. There aren't a lot of options out there for Bo Davis in Texas to go out and get defensive linemen. I'm going to read you a quote, Catch. I pulled it up here as we were talking. This is when I talked to DeAndre earlier this year after he visited Texas. And I said, what was the message from Bo Davis? And listen, I understand there's some recruiting stuff in here. They're going to, make these kids feel great, but pretty strong words. He said he was like, if you come here, you'll be the face of the defense. He said he really needs me on that defense. I'll be the face of the D-line, be a leader as soon as I get there. He said the rankings don't matter. He thinks I'm the number one defensive lineman in the country. That stood out to me. So, I mean, I get it, man. There's a lot of lip service that goes into recruiting. I mean, Bo may have told 10 kids that, I don't know, but I've never heard. Those are pretty strong words. I mean, that tells you that Bo Davis really, this was a priority pickup for Texas. Again, he visited Georgia officially, visited Florida. He's got offers from all over the country. You mentioned whatever it is, 63 offers. Friends with Peyton Kirkland. So that kind of keep that Florida pipeline. CJ Baxter, those two guys hosted him on his official visit. Those guys kind of hosted him when he came in on his unofficial visit way back in February, I think it was. So I just think this is a good pickup for Texas, a better pickup maybe than the numbers and the rankings indicate.
Yeah, and, I think that from a positional needs standpoint, the interior of the defensive line is one of the few places that they just haven't been able to recruit at a national level like they have kind of everywhere else on the field. You look at the defense, getting guys in the secondary at the nationally elite guys hasn't been a problem the last couple of years. I mean, that position's about to be incredibly deep. You look at, especially when you add this year's recruiting class, what we think the defensive back class might look like. Think about the linebackers a year ago. You think about, even though they're going after Colin Simmons at the edge position, and maybe they haven't signed anybody quite like Colin Simmons, they have been able, in the last couple of years, been able to recruit the edge position fairly well. When you think about Ethan Burke, they go back-to-back with Westlake kids, Colton Bassick as the other one, So, and you add Colin, if they land Colin Simmons later in the year, that's like 3 years in a row that they've been able to get a national top 70 at a minimum type player at the edge position. They haven't been able to do that at defensive tackle, though. So when you think about what comes next after Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat, there's some question marks about who fills the gap at those positions, after this season and after Murphy departs. I think the door is wide open for Robinson to come in and potentially have a pretty early impact, despite the lack of recruiting rankings, because somebody's got to come in and fill that void. And unlike maybe some of these other positions, there's not really a long list of guys that you're projecting to be immediate stars or anything close to that.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, there's one area I don't want to say I've been critical, but I've pointed it out numerous times in my columns and on the board, and I think you probably have too, Catch it. Bo Davis still hasn't landed that bona fide 5-star, okay? Especially on the interior defensive line. Those are the guys I thought moving to the SEC, those would be the guys that, maybe that would be the position where Texas would get the biggest boost in terms of recruiting and, just guys wanting to come play for you. This is a fantastic pickup. I think, like as you said, for reasons you stated, I think Robinson has a chance to come in and be an early contributor, but I still think there's another level Texas can get to and needs to get to at its defensive line recruiting, especially when they make that transition to the SEC. It's a far cry from what Texas has done the last few years and what Georgia does and Alabama, and frankly, what A&M has done with its defensive linemen the last couple of years. So there's still improvements that can be made, but I think this is a player that Texas picked up today that can come in, be an early contributor, work his way into that rotation, maybe even as a true freshman. Like you said, that opportunity will be there for DeAndre Robinson. I think he's athletic. He's got the size. I think he's talented enough. We'll see how it transitions when he gets to campus, but I think he's got that kind of potential.
Last thing, and then we'll wrap this thing up. I don't think we can understate the importance of Texas once again. You mentioned it earlier, but dipping into Florida. We saw them do that. C.J. Baxter is the headline, but they wasn't the only guy that they went in for in Florida. You got the sense that if they could, they would go back into Orlando because that's a pretty awesome little fertile recruiting ground to be able to get some roots into, and getting a commitment from Robinson followed on the heels of what they did in Orlando a year ago. And it's just they're just further investment in their infrastructure and having roots in. I just don't think I'm recalling the time at the end of Mac Brown's career when he was in Florida. And everybody was trying to get him back into town, and Mac described recruiting in Florida as, I'm just out here killing myself recruiting, right? And that's what going into Florida used to be treated. We're killing ourselves trying to get somebody out of Florida.
Flying on a private plane to Florida. Man, that sounds awful, right?
And now Texas is legitimately, and some of that obviously comes with the connections in the SEC. It makes going into Florida much easier. But how quickly Texas have been able to establish that part of Florida specifically as a place that they can go to. You mentioned it. In a year where Texas is down in recruiting at the defensive tackle position, Alex January, the only defensive tackle in the state of Texas that's rated higher than a mid 3-star in the Rivals defensive tackle rankings. One guy in the entire – he's the only defensive tackle in the state top 100. To give you an idea of how barren it is at that position this year, to be able to go into Orlando and to help address that position can't be taken for granted. There are alternative universes out there where Texas isn't strong in Orlando the way they suddenly are, and maybe it means – taking a total wild card at the position, a total project, instead of a guy that's really coveted nationally. I think that, again, it's something that Steve Sarkisian and his staff are making us take a little bit for granted. But 12 months ago, the notion that they'd just go into Orlando and scoop a guy up was a little more far-fetched than certainly it is today.
Yeah, they've also got 2 guys from IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida, in this class as well. So you always want to recruit IMG Academy, but Bo Davis has SEC ties, mostly in Mississippi, but kind of spills into Florida. Tashard Choice is a very active recruiter for Texas and Florida. He's got ties down there. Obviously California is going to be a recruiting ground with Sark being here. Louisiana is always going to be a recruiting footprint for Texas, no matter who the coach is. Arizona's becoming one for Texas, but certainly, hey, if you can pick 3, if you had to limit yourself to 3 states, right? You want Texas, California, and Florida. Okay, so for Texas to get a kind of a bit of a foothold in the state of Florida, And it's going to be tough. I mean, everybody recruits that state. There's good programs in the state. But for Texas to go there and have success the last couple of years, I think you'll certainly see that trend continue.
And Louisiana is probably 4, and that's another state where we've seen Texas. Texas has had some roots in Louisiana before, but they're succeeding with higher calibers of prospects from that state in the last couple of classes than I think Texas was when you think of, well, when they go out and they get a Malcolm Roach here and they get, you know, I mean, they've recruited the state actively for more, you know, since you and I have been doing this, it's just a little different. They're on a little bit of a different level now.
Terry Joseph's done a really good job, especially at the defensive back position. He's got a lot of contacts, a lot of ties there. So
proof's in the pudding. They keep going back and they keep getting guys. Guys, if you're excited about DeAndre Robinson's commitment today, celebrate by hitting that like button. Subscribe to the channel. We will always have videos just like these out when commitments go down. That's why you get notifications. So you are alerted anytime that we do one of these videos that you don't want to miss. Until next time, which might be, you never know with this Texas staff. We might be doing a recruiting video in 15 minutes. It might be a couple of days. Until next time, you guys be good. We'll talk to you soon. Later.